Your audio is breaking, I think.
Mine?
Now it's good.
Okay, we're good. We're good. We're back. Another
We are
Friday.
good.
Fourth Friday in a row. Welcome to the Pivot Point at HQ. Today with a different topic. We were always talking about margins.
Yeah.
You excited for today's beautiful session?
101.
101. So what are we going to talk about today? It's like most of brands are staring simply at the wrong numbers. They're either focusing on ROAS, CPA, or CPC. And the ad platform just spits them out. You optimize for them, but your business simply doesn't scale the way it should. And you ask yourself, why is that? Well, it's because these metrics only measure one thing, and that's the click, and that is the platform health. And the last step in a journey that started way, way, way earlier. Now, so today we're going to show you how we're going to fix that. We're going to talk about what we call the attribution illusion, why everything your ad platform tells you is technically true, but strategically useless. And then we're going to cut through the noise and get into the metric that actually move businesses. I'm not going to spoil them right now, but you will see them. So those are the ones that tell you what a customer is actually worth, what you're really paying to acquire a new one, and whether your ad spend is building an engine or simply burning cash. Because that's the biggest thing we see with a lot of these brands is like you're either fueling the engine or you're burning cash. That's the game. The ad spend, the wasted ad spend is in between channels. So this is the true metric of scale beyond the click. And today, let's dive into it.
It's equivalent to like 5 years back if you were running your ads without tracking.
Oh, yeah.
And, people would say, like, how stupid is that? Now, this is stupid. Like, if we don't have these metrics in place and then we are running our ad spend on these platforms, it's, just running blind.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. Like we have more than 100 million in ad spend, some thousands of ad accounts. And gradually over the last years, you see how more and more important this gets, right? So it's no longer, we already knew 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, we cannot look at things in isolation. But, typically landscapes move fast, but people catching up slow. And so you get a lot of customers who are getting burned because the tactics change, the strategies change, because the landscape and the intricacies of these ad platform also change. And because the incentivization for an ad platform is to make you spend more money, their attribution will tell you you're doing fine, but that's not always what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into it. The attribution illusion. Now, if we're looking here, what we're seeing, this is kind of like the omni-channel reality. And I think a lot of you that are watching either on the replay or right now, you'll nod your head and you will totally understand this, but nobody's really optimizing for it, or you don't know how to optimize on it. And on the right side, we see, in-app ROAS and CPA, that's where most people in their ad platforms focus on. But it's not the right ways to scale. We're going to show you today what we actually should focus on. You have anything to add here?
It's more like, how many touch points does it take you as a user to convert for any purchase? Like if you are on, and everybody is on Instagram nowadays, and if I see first ad on my Instagram, am I going to buy that product? Probably not. You still have not convinced me. I've seen blah blah influencer talk about it, benefits of it, but why should I buy? And then the third influencer talks about it on my organic reel, not even on the paid I'm talking about, because I'm scrolling constantly. Everybody does it. I can officially accept that on a live now. At least 2 hours goes for me, because obviously my objective is to always to get to the ad to see how good it is. But yeah, coming to the point, I see one influencer talk about it, and then I see the third influencer talk about it, and then I see then I just go to Amazon and look for it, and then I add it to wish list it, and then I forget about it, and then I see an ad from them on my Instagram or on my YouTube. I still don't engage with the ad. So there are so many touch points. Like if we go to these third party attribution tools, they do facilitate that data nowadays. Like how many touch points does it take for one purchase, and sometimes it can be as many 200 touch points or
Mm,
300
yeah,
points. And it's like you need to optimize according to the true reality and not based off an illusion that is given to you by the ad platforms. um, and that's where on this slide you can see there's like somebody organically searches for you, and then do a social share, email click. All these are not going to be tracked in some ways or the other, or some part of it is going to be tracked. Let's say your view content is being tracked by your analytics, but then your referrals, let's say, are not going to be, or a lot of other things. Offline interactions also happen. They are not going to be tracked, and the only last two touch points are tracked in isolation. And then you
yeah,
make your whole marketing ad spend decision based on that isolated data, which
yeah.
is so detrimental for a business. You need the full picture.
And that's also the thing, right? Because most brand owners who do not know all everything about this, they hire the agency, but the agency is typically also unaware. So what they're seeing in the attribution
Yeah.
tool is like, hey, oh, Google Ads ROAS has a five return on ad spend. Well, Meta has a 1.7. Let's scale Google. No, because Google is just doing bottom of funnel. Meta is doing the top of funnel. But if you just look at that, and that's that last part right over here, then you're
Yeah.
optimizing the wrong thing, and you're going to burn a lot of money on the wrong choices. And so this is where the whole landscape is going. It's about pivoting, directing, steering money in the right direction, and you have to look through the forest to see the trees here. It's getting more complex, and that's why today's session is actually so important. So if
Coming
we
from like, sorry, like I'll complete that one what you said. The last touch point is Google, and I always feel like that Google is always over credited and given so much of credit which it doesn't deserve most of the times. And
Yes,
Meta is so underappreciated because people judge it based off ROAS and not its true impact, right? And then
yeah,
people, what you said about ROAS, and then they decide the ad spend. I feel Meta can do way too much for a brand in order to scale.
yeah.
If we just switched our measurement lens, how do we look at Meta?
I mean, the biggest thing is obviously branded traffic comes in through Google, so it quickly looks like it's doing better, and then there's tons of people who are not excluding non-brand and branded traffic in Google, so your PMAX looks amazing. You want to scale it, and then it just drops into the floor because you cannot scale branded traffic. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to learn. Like, it's definitely much more complex than it was 5 years ago, and therefore 5 years ago
Mm.
was more complex than 5 years before that. I jumped into 2011 with the manual bidding. It was more simple, but a lot more manual. You did n-grams, you did a lot of manual bidding for particular, and people bought differently. People, their bullshit detectors went up throughout the years, and they're like, I'm not going to buy off of one ad. Let me do some research on this brand. Let me check what's going on. So it's the evolution of the market as well, that we have to evolve with, really.
And the funniest thing is, like I read a case study, the big brands, even Nike's of this market, is actually making a mistake like this. So they had they had replaced their CMO with a new one who introduced all this performance marketing, and this is tracking and attribution and all of that, and all of their sales were actually going down. And then they had the old CMO come back, and he was like, why are we doing performance marketing? Go back to the old ways of doing things. And then the
Yeah,
sales went up. And
beautiful.
so it's not like just the small brands are making this mistake. Even the big brands are making the same mistake of this, are into the illusion that you spoke.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. I think this is a very solid point. What I've throughout my years in this space, I've seen it time and time again where um, the small brands make mistakes that you sometimes see the same brands, even at a 9-figure level, see making. You're like, at this
Yeah.
level, this is not supposed to happen, but it still does. And it's just more money and more money to throw away and test things with. But yeah, definitely. And if you look at it, just the performance KPIs that people want to put on it, it's like optimizing as an accountant. If it doesn't get hit, we need to cut. But if you cut more and more, there comes a point where everything starts to collapse. And we've seen many, many accounts go like that. So, towards that, the actual noise is obviously return on ad spend. It's your cost per acquisition metric, and it's also your CPC, because they don't tell you anything about what happened outside of the ad platform. And there's no resolution for omnichannel. It isolates that traffic on that platform, and it does not measure anything of your actual cash flow. And for brands, this is the thing. As an agency, you might look in like, okay, I'm going to optimize on these metrics. But for the brand, what's important is cash flow. So you need to start looking as the brand and as the CFO into this to really have an added contribution to it. Because now, so with machine learning, AI, things get way easier. But it's just you have to look at it through a different lens.
Yeah. It's like the first metric is like, I would say, is the one that should not be named.
This one here, right? This is your Voldemort.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, that's the one I want.
Yeah, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but my wife is, so I know who it is and why we should not speak of him. So yeah, ROAS is the thing. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and so a lot of brands have evolved towards either a blended ROAS or a MER. Blended ROAS and MER is basically the same, just the equation is different. But that only is not enough, right? You need more. It tells you more of what the blended performance was, but it doesn't tell you things about an actual cash flow, for example. So the combination between these three, the nCAC is your new customer acquisition cost, just for new, because new customers are your lifeline. And so this one isolates the cold traffic and measures the actual cash flow, which is going to be important for a brand, because as you scale and you're 7 figures, scaling to your 8 figures, you want to aggressively scale. You will need formulas for that scaling. You cannot just do, okay, I think it's going fine, we're hitting this blended ROAS, because you need to look behind the curtain, what's actually happening right over there.
And these signals that we're talking about, these metrics, they have been here since, like, I don't know, the starting of marketing, and they are not new ones. Even this return on ad spend, the ROAS, CPA are not, they have become more hyped, and people have more paid attention to these over the past 10 years. And these signals on the right, MER has always been there, and most of the advertising marketing performance was measured based on these metrics. Now these are getting reintroduced again because there was so much of shift, and people's behavior also changed, and reliance on these attribution to judge got so toxic, I would say, that now they have to learn their way out of this toxic metric system and get back to the old ways.
I recall back in 2011, 2012, when I was working with the Bonprix and the Home Depot accounts back in that manual era, we had the KPI that we were optimized for was CSR, cost sales ratio, which is basically MER. It's just a different framing and different formula, but it's still all the same. But that one was still in platform. We didn't look blended. So times have evolved. But yeah, you just got to understand what it does and why it's important. Like the abbreviations here, they evolve with the ecosystem. But you got to know them to understand, where's the money going, and do we have enough to pay for inventory next month? Because don't want to waste everything on ads.
It's more like if you had let's take an example. 5 years ago, if you had a very good ROAS, would you have paid attention to your CTR, for example, or your CPCs, for instance? I know for some, like for scale, it would matter. But in a nutshell, it does not really matter as long as you have a really good return on ad spend. That's the same shift that has happened. Like, who cares about ROAS, CPA, CPC? If I am printing money on the back end, I don't care about like CTRs or
Yeah.
CPAs, you know?
And to that point, I think it's very valid because majority of the brands, they're optimizing for comfort. They feel like they hit a milestone and then they just, they get comfortable with it. That, like, we talk with so many of these people, they don't know their. If you ask them what is your ROAS, they know the number. If you ask them what on average costs a new customer for you, you get a silence and a blank stare because they don't know the number. Well, that is actually the number you need to know to scale
Exactly.
effectively. So the key business metrics that we're going to talk to today that are actually required for scale and cash flow are lifetime value, new customer media efficiency ratio, your new customer acquisition cost, and then ECPNV, effective cost per new visit, and why they're important. So the first one is LTV. You want to take that one?
This one is the most important one. It's basically you can acquire a customer and it can be profitable on the first purchase. But then the actual profitability comes from how long that customer stays with you and continues to buy from you at what AOV. Right. So the more you have, the bigger the delta between NCAC and LTV will be more, you know, more room for you to scale in the long run. The shorter that is, you will not be able to take that and scale it quickly. And that's where you have to optimize these three things to have a healthy LTV. What consists of an LTV is basically what's the average cart value, like how much, what's the one purchase like, how much does it contribute on the first purchase, and what's the frequency like. Do they come back after the first purchase, and how many times do they come back, and how long do they come back? Like customer lifeline would be like, let's say they keep coming back after 1 year and they after that they don't come back. So all these three combines will dictate your LTV, and all these three should be optimized. For example, you can do upsells for average order values. So the cart value, the basket size increases. Let's say if you have $80 as an AOV, you can up it to, let's say, $90, which is another $10. And that $10 is not just for one, they will come back. And when they come back, they just don't buy it at 80 again, they buy it again at 90, and
Yeah.
then again at 90. So now that's one average order value. And the purchase frequency is like how often can you sell them. For example, let's say if I, for Apple, I mean, for like, I don't usually like to take Apple's the example for Apple, because I feel like they're very different when it comes to marketing. But if you buy an iPhone, you would upsell them for an AirPod. You would upsell them for a MacBook. So the frequency keeps, you have a versatile product catalog. So those people come back to buy something else. So the frequency, and then the customer lifespan is obviously the loyalty programs and how loyal they are, and you can continue to make it longer if you put in efforts and be. For example, like I love this one company that does protein bar, and I bought from them four times, and the fifth order they sent me just because I'm a loyal customer. And I was like, I was so happy about it that I placed the next order immediately. And that's what you do. And you don't try to like always squeeze money out of the customer. You just
Yeah.
genuinely care for them. Like, I really appreciate you being
Yeah.
loyal to me, and here's a freebie or like a discount for you. And that's how you extend that customer lifespan.
Yeah.
And that is what is the most important. If you don't have a good LTV, you would first not be able to have a higher NCAC to compete in that market. The higher the NCAC a company or a brand can do will acquire the most customers in that niche.
Yep.
So that's why LTV is the first thing to even get before the NCAC as a figure, because that dictates the whole life, like the plan. How are you going to lay out?
Yeah, and I think what's also important is that LTV is a rolling window, because with most brands, if you're just starting out, you will not know your LTV. You just work with an AOV, right? And as you progress, you get more data through the months, through the years. Now you can see, hey, what does the data tell me about this customer? How often do they come back? Hey, we have a 10% here that are super loyal. They spend the most money. They keep coming back. Okay, what is the average number of somebody coming back? You can also look at the different categories of your product line. Like we talked about, jewelry, necklaces versus bracelets versus rings. Which one have the highest returning users? There's a lot of data
Yeah.
from a Shopify perspective that you can leverage to look into these particular things. Obviously, it gets easier when you sell one product, but when you sell one product, with just a few abbreviations, there's not a whole lot you can do to keep that customer for a long time. I mean,
Mhm.
ultimately, some people might really love it. But what you said about Apple is the master of retention, because they know, like, I will never go away from Apple, because all the pictures that I have on here, the iCloud, I don't want to go through the hassle of changing that ever, right? So it is a very smart way of doing this. But yeah, it's all about how can I increase the value of a customer, and how often can I make them come back in total, because there's only so much a person will spend with you, and obviously if you position yourself in the right way, they will keep coming back.
Yeah.
So the timeline of value, you can see it here, like it's a compounding value because of the purchase frequency, right? And this bleeds a bit into the returning customers as well. Um, you want a person to return to you as often as possible, and with these months, so after the first month, there's obviously a lesser amount of people that are coming back, but after 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, that population, that group of people that will return is higher. So there's a compounding value because of the purchase frequency and the lifespan that it has with these people.
Yeah. This one other point is like why it's important is, let's say that I have an NCAC of $90, the most I can spend to acquire a customer, and I am breaking even on the first purchase. But then the real profit starts coming in from the third month. Now they come back and they purchase for $90 again, maybe because usually a business or brand has a higher AOV on the returning. So that amount is completely my free money, right? I did not spend on it, not much. Like obviously there will be some spend to reacquire a returning, but not as much NCAC as the business rule. The MBA 101 is it takes more to acquire a new customer, you know,
Yeah.
than to sell to the existing one. And that is where you decide where is that bar and what can you afford. Because let's say if you have a NCAC of 90, and when they come back on the third, they don't purchase for 90. They, let's say, only purchase for 45, which I have seen with brands. They sell these backpacks, and they were best sellers, and the
Mm.
second purchase was actually lower. They were
Mm.
selling the handbags, like those ones that go around your shoulders,
Yeah.
and those really don't cost as much as the backpack. So the returning AOV was actually lower. So they introduced another whole line of products that would allow the returning to purchase a higher AOV, which
Yeah.
extended the LTV and the value for that customer. They came back and purchased even higher AOV than the first one. And then you also decide, also see, oh, after the 6 months, the LTV starts going down. And so, how can I optimize that? So, each
Yeah.
month is basically important to understand as a whole. That what should I do? Okay, after 6 months, I should shoot over a coupon to extend that LTV.
Yeah.
So each month in that order is important, because you understand, oh, the frequency drops at 3, the AOV drops at the 6 months, or like how can I optimize these steps? along the way.
And I think that it's also important because the hardest part is to make them convert once, right? That's the hardest part
Yeah.
because it's all about trust. It's all about, do I trust this brand? I don't have a feeling with this brand yet. Do I really like it? Then when they purchase the first time, the second time they are willing to invest more money if something's really good.
Yeah.
So if you then don't have an upsell or don't have another product that is equal to that, or you just have a good margin on it, now you're shooting yourself in the foot because these people are already in the door. You just need to give them something that they want as a secondary or tertiary
Yeah.
thing, and they will buy from you. And so, yeah, it becomes really important to think about bundles, upsells, and everything. And your data will show you exactly where the gaps are. So, yeah, what you're saying about discount coupons or introducing a loyalty program, whatever that is, it helps
Mm.
bring this forward. So that was LTV. And now we're going to go into the new customer acquisition costs, or the nCAC, which is the true cost of growth. Now, it's not a metric you'll see inside your ad platform. It's not a metric that Meta has or Google has, although some people say, well, it's just CPA, right? Yeah, but it's for new customers only. And this is a blended number. So this is about your total marketing and sales expenses divided by the number of new customers acquired. Now, why new? Because with MER only, for example, or with just CPA, we cannot distinguish returning from new. And we just established with LTV how important it is to have a loyalty, have a loyalty base coming back. But if you don't need to acquire the same person the second time because they can come in through email or direct traffic or branded traffic, they're much cheaper. So the blended number looks better than in actuality might be. So we want to keep track at all times. How much does it cost to acquire a new customer? Because that in its isolation is showing the true growth. If that number explodes, there's something significantly wrong. But that signal would not get to you if you have a really good returning base. It would just be blended and you would not see that. So that's why new customer acquisition cost is such an important metric to track.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I basically explained this, right? The blended trap here. Your new customers are at the core, the center. You have your total orders. Your total orders is just your standard CAC or your CPA, however you want to call it. It does not show you how much of that is returning. Returning customers typically don't cost you as much or nothing at all. Therefore, it kind of like creates this layer of mystery over your total CAC. It does not show you what the new customers cost. Has it gotten more expensive? Have it gotten worse? Because that's what you truly want to figure out. Because your line of growth is intricately connected with your nCAC. And as returning customers artificially deflate your acquisition cost, that is what you want to prevent, that you just look at that one blended number, because it is simply not a reality. And scaling, cash flow, and inventory are important for this particular part. Scaling seesaw. This was your favorite. You can take it.
This one is more like, let's say we are talking about a brand that has three major categories that they sell. Again, we'll take the same examples as, let's say, I'm a jewelry brand and I sell necklaces, I sell rings, earrings, or what was the fourth one? Bracelets.
Bracelets, yeah.
And then my nCAC will fluctuate depending on the LTV. And what does it mean is basically, let's say, for the holidays, I sell more of my necklaces, and my people who enter as a new customer who purchase a necklace, they actually are more likely to come back and purchase a bracelet, which is obviously you would understand based off the data that you acquired over the years being in the market. But when I have when I push a lot of bracelets, let's say it's Mother's Day, and people like to gift, let's say, bracelets to their mothers, and those customers, they are less likely to come back and purchase a necklace, and that fluctuates my LTV a lot. Now, what category at what period of that year am I pushing will dictate and fluctuate my LTV. Now, if your LTV fluctuates, your nCAC will also fluctuate. So if my LTV for the next 6 months is 120, which shifts to 100, then you cannot afford to, let's say, at 120 LTV you were doing 60 as an NCAC, and at 100 LTV you would probably just do a 50, because you have a lot of costs associated, and mostly you have a fixed cost, cash flow issues, and all of that. So there is a seesaw that goes on. Your NCAC is never fixed for the whole year.
Yeah.
That I'm going to do a standard $60 or $100 NCAC, and that be fixed for the entire year. It will be, revised according to how the LTV fluctuates. So we want to make sure that we are not overspending, and then we are also predicting that the LTV, okay, will come back at this NCAC because I have this data to back it up. And so, I'm going to be profitable at that NCAC. So this is, again, to keep in check. You sometimes also businesses do, or agencies do, make this mistake that they fix an NCAC for a business. Like, for example, one of our clients, their NCAC fluctuates a lot. Like, it can go from a 60 to an 80 also, but we have scaled that business to 4x, right? And we don't look at NCAC in isolation. Again, you never look any metric in isolation. These metrics basically build a story for you and create that an opportunity where you can scale. So when we look at one um, metric in isolation, it basically doesn't allow you that scalability.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to understand the relationship between the two and how to control it.
Yeah, and I think it's important because it depends on business by business case. And I think the key part is that you said like NCAC should not be in isolation because they have different price points, they have different categories, like you said, rings, bracelets, necklaces. They all have different price points, right? So there's an average of an NCAC, and if we look at the NCAC in isolation for all these three categories, they oh my god, for ring is much more expensive. Let's cut ring. No, rings have a much higher AOV. So right, it has to be imbalance and not look at it in isolation. And what you actually want to do, and I think that's the core part, what you mentioned as well, is saying, okay, I have all these data points. I'm looking business broad, business health. How is it going? And we create a story with the data that we're seeing. And we use all the data we have underneath from the different categories to all the price points to create a narrative for like, why do we want to scale? With what do we want to scale? And what would it deliver us in the longer run? For example, if we know that bracelets is a good easy sell because it's a lower AOV front end, but it has lesser returning customers on the back end, is that a good investment? Likely not. So what do? Well, we want to see where can we put that budget better to increase the returning customers, the LTV, and therefore our NCAC can wiggle with that same base.
Yeah.
Next one on the list, new customer media efficiency ratio. So we already talked about media efficiency ratio, which is basically blended ROAS in an inverted way. This one is, again, the blended number by itself is okay as a number to keep track of, a metric to keep track of. However, again, we don't want to focus on one thing because, again, it's blended. Returning customers are typically coming back through branded direct email, whatever that is. You don't need to acquire them twice for a very hefty price. So if we're just looking at more in isolation, we will only see a specific number that looks good. But what we want to know is like, hey, what is that for new customers in particularly? Because that is what we need to know to see, okay, how is that trending? As we saw with nCAC, the new customers are the lifeline for your growth. That's why it's so key to keep track of new customer efficiency ratio. So the total revenue from new customers divided by the total marketing expenses. That's the formula here.
Yeah. This metric is actually the most important sometimes, because a business can continue to acquire a customer at a certain NCAC, but then they also have to keep in check about their cash flows, because the more you acquire a customer requires more ad spend, and more ad spend disrupts the cash flow of a business, because you have to get your inventory restocked, And for that, sometimes people have to pay for the inventory in advance. Not all businesses have to pay the inventory after they sell the product. It depends on like what the relationship between the brand and the manufacturer is, for example, or the supplier. And that's why cash flow is one thing that is basically judged based on the NMR as a figure. So if I have, let's say, 100 customers come in and my AOV suddenly drops by 10%, my cash flow gets affected in that period of time. And then I have to maintain that. You can benchmark that number again, but then your NMR will also fluctuate depending on your AOV. Let's say you're pushing different products, your NMR will fluctuate, your NMR will go high. Again, as we spoke about, you can't do isolation with nCAC. You also cannot do isolation with your NMR as well, because you have to then dig deep into like what's the COGS like and everything. Do the four margins. We did a whole live regarding this one. If you've not watched it, you can watch it. We went into in depth what consists of all of these margins. Um, and how does that calculate your NMR and profitability? Um, yeah, so NMR again is more um, cash in from the new customers and cash out from your ad spend. That dictates, and you can benchmark that number to maintain a cash flow for the business.
Yeah, when that gets negative or too close to break even, you have a problem because you cannot pay anything up front for inventory or whatever. So your cash flow gets
Yeah.
really tight and you're not that liquid anymore. So then we have the scaling phenomenon, and this probably rings a bell to a lot of people. As you see in your ad platform, you have your in-app return on ad spend, and the in-app return on ad spend will tell you obviously how good am I doing right now. Then the moment you start to pour more money into the thing, your ROAS starts to dip. Right, the scale push happens here. It starts to dip all the way down. It's also the laws of scaling. Typically, when you add more budget into something, conversion rate typically goes a little lower as you expand from bottom to middle or top of funnel. The conversion rate simply go down as you expand. So the ROAS goes down. However, your NMR is the thing that you want to keep tracking. Like, as I scale with this money, can I keep my NMR, my new customer media efficiency ratio? Can I keep that at the same level? Because that's true business scaling. We don't look at in-app scaling. We look at business health and business scaling. And that's the line you want to try and keep as steady as possible.
Yeah. And we've seen these examples. Like one of my ex client, so they had to add about 20% additional ad spend on top of the current ad spend. And the decision earlier was made that we will put 50% of that budget to Google, because ROAS looks really good, and not so much on Meta, because Meta has a horrible ROAS. So Meta, you don't get anything. And then, oh, by the way, email marketing, you guys have been doing a good job. Where do you want to spend? Do you want to discount more? So that's how the ad spend was distributed. As we spoke about, the in-app ROAS goes down. The right way, the scaling phenomena that we explained was basically that you don't look at ROAS at all. Sometimes even if it goes down or goes up, you don't give any regards to ROAS. You just take that as a benchmark. Let's say your Meta was at a 0.5x, but you were actually scaling a lot. You were healthy top line, and as you add again on into Meta, your ROAS will further go down to, let's say, 0.3, or maybe it stays the same. Usually it drops, as you mentioned, but your top line looks stable. The NMR looks stable. And that's where the benchmarking is the most important thing. Not just with even NMR, you can benchmark your nCAC, you can benchmark your NAOV, you can benchmark all these metrics. You can benchmark in-app ROAS also. Like, as long as I have a 0.5 in Meta, I don't care, you know.
Yeah.
Or if I have a 3, 5, 10, 100 ROAS on Google. I don't care, because that's how it has been. That's how I had distributed the spend before, and I'm just going to scale that existing funnel. Um, I've seen this a lot. Like I've seen, I think 8 out of 10 brands do this mistake, and it's
Mhm.
still so common, which sometimes a bit annoying. Like all these years of learning this, and also practicing it with our own clients. And
Yeah.
when we speak to these clients, and they come with this, oh, our last agency was looking at ROAS. Why are you asking us about our Shopify? Why are you
Yeah.
asking us about the nCAC?
Why are you not first
Um,
auditing the ad account? Why you want to audit our Shopify? Like, what's that? Why you
yeah.
want to do that? Well, yeah, business health, my
And
friends.
then these audits also, like you see these random, oh, your in-app ROAS is 3, I can do a 4. And you
Yeah.
know what you should do? You should rearrange your campaign, scale up these keywords, and
Yeah.
do that. Nobody cares. Like the first primary reason, I feel like most of the brands, they feel the urge to switch the agency, is one reason. Most of the time is they're burning money. They literally are not profitable, and
Yeah.
that is why they switch agency. And then the same agency puts them in the same situation, and the right agency would educate them, like what do you need to really focus on. And that is where the knowledge transfer also goes, but then it's the same loop happens again
As
and
a
again.
as a brand owner, you also need to be open to this because most brand owners, they either come from an era where they started doing Facebook ads or meta ads back then themselves, so they know have a basic understanding. They still focus on return on ad spend because that's all they know. But times have changed, things have changed. When you have people who have rented its own brand or understand how this works with business health, now you need to actively open yourself up to like, oh shit, I'm lacking my new set of skill to look at this from a business health perspective. Because yeah, benchmarking, it makes sense. If we have benchmarked that this needs to be the nCAC, let's say $50 needs to be the nCAC, and we
Mhm.
benchmark that against a meta in-app return on ad spend, we're totally fine. Otherwise, I get on calls like I had yesterday with a buddy of mine that I know for a couple of years running a brand, and he said like, well, we were in Meta. Meta was actually going down in app, but a business health was going great, so we just kept that money there. However, we have a Google agency right now. I get on them with on a call with them. There's the person who does the reporting, there's the person who is the media buyer, and there's the person who's the account manager, and nobody is owning shit because they're all just like I did this. And so it coincides like they're not in the game for the actual business health. They're just more like, okay, I got to fill these gaps. I got to press these buttons. Um, I think it's much more easier to have operators in there that understand the stuff, that work with you as a part and extension of your team, and that truly
Yeah.
understand this to the core and can actually assist and guide you on this so that you don't have to worry about another hat that you have to put on and keep yourself up to date with all this change in the landscape, because there's an endless stream that's going on here, and this landscape is one of the fastest one that changes, I can say, after the last 15 years. So
Absolutely.
that's going to be an important part of the future as well.
Yeah. And that is one measurement side of things, which also like flows into the expectations, like what the true expectation should be from ad platform or any ad platform. Even if it's Google, Meta, people think that the moment they put in the budget, they are actually buying a conversion. What you're really buying is a probability that that would be a conversion. You're not
Exactly.
actually buying or getting a user or a customer.
Yeah.
It is not possible. And how do you actually increase the probability is by understanding the numbers, and you have data like, okay, based of this I can increase my probability. It could be CRO, it could be with a good creative, it could be campaign structure. Again, those are multiple probabilities, but the main point, like main pressure is put on the campaigns itself, and which never works. And even like after the last live we did, the Google live for 2026, they clearly said that like it's going to be all website. You can't
Yeah,
do
Google
any much.
Marketing Live. Yeah.
Yeah, keywords are dead. Your manual CPCs are going to be dead. Your standard shopping is going to be dead. What are
Yeah.
you actually going to do?
What are you
How
gonna
are you
do?
going to, yeah, like
Yeah.
get that highest probability? Is knowing your numbers, getting a good website, and actually a good product.
We should do a whole live about the fallacy of TROS campaigns, because a lot of people still think if I put a 300% TROS in, that's what I'm going to get. No, no, you're not. And if you still think that,
Yeah.
there's a lot of road that we like to take you through, and understand that that's not the way that the machine works. Because if you understand how the machine works, you can anticipate and kind of like beat the machine at its own game, but you have to know what you're in for. So then we have the last metric in this case for business health, and that is your effective cost per new visit. It's ECPNV, the longest one, but believe me, you'll get used to it. No worries. It's a true indicator of scaling costs. It goes into this the same thing, right? We've been talking about returning customers, new customers, AOV, LTV. Everything revolves around the new users and returning users. But returning users are deflating or inflating, depending how you look at it, your overall performance, right? Because returning customers don't cost you as much. So looking at it in combined speed, it gives you a skewed view of reality. And what we want to get as close to the truth as possible. And so this metric helps you do that by dividing the total marketing spend by the number of truly new visits. And then you get kind of like your CPC for new visitors. And now you can do your math. Be like, okay, how much can I actually spend per click on this particular campaign? Or if you want to start a YouTube campaign, wherever you want to put your money. This is typically for top of funnel efforts. But that's where it's going to be very important for cold scale.
Absolutely. And this number you don't get in platform. We need to get like a third party. And this number is also, this is now also dependent a lot on attribution, but it's directional. Like this is not as hard nailed as like the one nCAC and
Yeah.
NMR. Those are very like pure numbers coming from your actual revenue. But ECPNV is more the true new visits you would never be able to get, because the new visits, to judge that on a digital platform, is mostly based off clicks and attribution, as we all know how flawed it is. So
Absolutely.
you can get a direction. Like, for example, your branded campaign has 50% new visits. Now, how can somebody wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I remember that brand, let me go Google their brand name? That is not possible. It's that just tells you like 50% of your attribution sucks, because those people would have heard somewhere about you. Either they would have watched a YouTube video, engaged with Meta. And we see that on all these third party attribution tools, right? Like even brand has, PMAX has these 50% new visits. Your retargeting promo campaigns have a certain percent of new visits. That just doesn't happen. So again, this is all directional, but the direction that people should be looking at is basically what campaign is driving my most new visits, and what is the cost to get these people into the funnel. So
Yeah.
let's say I have a campaign running on Meta and I have a campaign running on YouTube. Both of them are built doing same creatives, are built to do brand awareness. The cost to get that cold traffic from Meta is $1, and it is $1.50 on YouTube. The efficiency of that additional point 0.5, then you can obviously calculate later on, but then the cost per new visit on Meta is cheaper, so that is more scalable, right? And that's how you keep a track of like what is the best channel where I can put more money and is more scalable efficiently, because
Yeah.
it gives me new visitors at an efficient rate.
Exactly. Yeah. So everything of these four metrics actually comes back to the split between new and returning. It is at all times you want to divide them, because combining them gives you a very skewed view. And we all know, like in app, Google Meta attribution is lying to us. Attribution tools are lying to us because you can click on 5 different attribution windows, but some of the elements don't change with it. It all is still model data, right? It's like 30, 40, 50, up to 60% model data. So we can use it, but we want to use it directionally and just use it like, okay, how can we benchmark that against the reality? And so we go back, and we've talked about this also in the last calls, back to just simply spend, where can I put the spend in, what happens on the back end, and just look at benchmarking wise, because the rest is just directional. We cannot take it as hard truth. Yeah, the revenue that you're getting and the amount of orders that you're getting on Shopify, that is hard truth. But how that got there, through what customer journeys, that is very suggestible if you look at it through 15 different lenses. So that's why these numbers are so key for that part. Yeah.
This one also flows in with that same thing. You decide your ECPNB threshold. Like it cannot go over a $5. Let's do 5 cents. Like I want that. You want to acquire, as you imagine a funnel, you want to fill the most people up in the funnel so that those customers come out at the bottom. So more efficiently you fill the bottom, the more efficient your nCAC is going to be. So it's as simple as that. You decide a threshold. Because you've decided a threshold for your nCAC, you cannot go over that, and unless you have black money and you can pay unlimited money, then you don't have any threshold. You can just go on.
Infinite money, but most people don't have that. Most brands don't have enough money. So yeah, it's going to be a key here to have efficient ad spend coming on the other end.
Threshold is more like you have benchmark. Like I have this really beautiful funnel that continues to give me these customers at this nCAC, which I can afford. So what would be the benchmark ECPND for me? And then I decide, okay, if I spend another $50,000 and my cost of new visit person, cost for new visit is actually higher on YouTube, I would rather put it into Meta because that's
exactly
cheaper. So those things could be very different to multiple brands, and not necessarily just between YouTube and Meta. It could be between TikTok. It could be, we talk about social platforms, it could be doing CTV ads or any
Pinterest,
other platform.
we still have them.
Pinterest.
And
then when we talk about paid search, it could be between Amazon, it could be between Google. Where is that effective cost per new visit?
Exactly. And so that gives us the conclusion to, as the strategic partners, on the metrics that actually matter and the growth that scales with it. These 4 are your key to effective scaling. And rather than looking at everything platform health, you start to measure the business health, because the client, although they want to give you a ROAS target, it doesn't help them, right? It doesn't help them decide, oh, do I ever have cash flow for next month? So you, as your added value, you can say, okay, we're scaling and we're keeping that stable. That means that our cash flow is not touched. We can still buy inventory, and we can gradually scale this throughout the year without falling into some sort of a money pit and without wasting ad spend in between channels, because that's ultimately the game here. We want to connect the business health with the platform health, benchmark everything against one another so that we have the formula for scaling, which is going to be custom between brands. But that's the puzzle you want to figure out. What is the MMM? And then with these metrics, that will help you get there quicker.
These are more like soldiers. The real king, and we'll eventually do a session about it, is contribution margin.
Yes.
And then you should, like, there's one giveaway and a quick template, a rule of thumb, or whatever you want to call it. If an agency or if a brand's language or agency's language is to talk in ROAS, CPA, CPC, it's a red flag. Take your money and run away as far as you can from that agency.
Yes.
You will bless us and you will save your money.
Yes. especially
That's
nowadays. Yeah,
especially nowadays. And then the right way to get an agency is who's talking the finance language as a marketing team, who's talking about contribution margin, LTV, NCAC, all these metrics that we are talking about now. One of our clients, like if you've seen those reportings that we do to that client, it's the sweetest and nicest reporting we have ever done. Is just one single message: this is the contribution margin and we are increasing the spend, dropping the spend.
exactly.
That's it.
You
No
don't need
ROAS,
it. No,
CPC.
Raz. No 20-page reports with all types of bullshit
Exactly.
to come up with like what you've done in the last week or 2 weeks. No, we're just telling you this is what we're going to be at. This is the contribution margin. We're scaling. We're going to put more money in. That's what a trusted partner do. You don't need to come in with a place like, oh, I don't feel trusted. Let me lay out a 20-page report every week that they won't read, by the way, because they don't care. All they care is about the end result. And having that
Exactly.
connection, having that conversation while showing the capabilities of that, you talk the same language. It's all about talking the same language and executing on that same language that the brand owners are talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of concludes today's talk. I'm checking here, but I don't think there's any comments, or at least I cannot see them, which is fine because it was well, you said it would be, our talk here would be not that advanced. I think it's still a lot to take in for a lot of people, but this is going to be new. If you want to survive in this era, more people will say it's AI. Yes and no, because if your AI is still, advising you or executing on a ROAS target, your account goes to shit and you're going to waste a lot of money in between the channels. AI is just going to amplify how much and how quick you're going to waste your money. So unless you take this lens and lay it over the results, whether it's Meta or Google, and then have your AI leverage it, now you're on the right track. But just AI in combination with ROAS is not going to pay off for a lot of people, and a lot of brands.
I think I'm going to conclude with the same thing, which keeps coming back to me is like if you're not doing these metrics, then your account is equivalent to an account that is running without conversion tracking. And which is
Yeah,
just the thought of it is so scary.
it is. I mean, back in the old days, you had accurate conversion tracking. Now there is conversion tracking, but it's as inaccurate or as the attribution doesn't make sense at all that it can be as damaging as not having it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Or
agree.
auto apply recommendations.
Yeah, you gotta love that one. Haven't I'm always saying, if you're taking gambling advice from the casino, because this is a bit of a size curl, but it's more, we all know about Google Reps or Meta Reps. I don't know about Meta Reps, but Google Reps has become very aggressive in the last years. Google has one KPI, Meta has one KPI: make you spend more money. Uh,
Yeah.
if you take a rep's advice on adding a display campaign in or anything else silly, like honestly, you have to take into account, follow the money. Who is telling you what to do? They will just like we have one client where Google is consistently pushing YouTube because that's the generation
Mm.
at the clients at that level. But if we look ECPNV wise, that money would still be better spent on Meta. However,
Yeah.
they try to put all the shiny objects in there, and I, it's all fair game. It's a business, needs to run. So no offense there, but it's a reality. You have to take into account and be critical at what's being put in front of your face versus what you actually should execute on, and you need different
Absolutely.
metrics to track that. So yeah, with that, I think we conclude today's session. You have any final thoughts? Make a good final
Uh,
thought.
Final thought would be just don't get blinded by ROAS. Seriously, I did just the fact that it's your hard-earned money, and then you are just completely in the dark, wasting that because you don't have right tools to invest that money in the right way. Get smart people.
Yeah.
I'm not just, it's not a sales pitch, don't even get us like, but get smart people who understand how to put in this money and who take responsibility of your hard earned money and don't just bullshit you with these reports, ROAS, who don't even care how much money is coming back to you. Are you actually profitable? And how are they going to lay out a plan for you to scale and grow, because it's always for profits? And if that's not the case, drop the agency, because otherwise they're bullshitting. And it just kills me, for because I come from a business back, like business family, and I understand like how important it is. um
Well said. I agree with it. Applause is there. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week with another version of the Pivot Point at SKU. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye bye.